Future CRNA. Welcome back to CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Finnell, and today we're going to do a quick episode because I want to unravel this myth and help you get clarity on how much debt you will have after CRNA school. So let's go ahead and get into today's show. All right, welcome back to CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. You are going to see our twins in this episode because they are here in my room, and if I wasn't holding them, they would be fussing. So this is how this episode is going to go today. All right, so again, we're going to talk about how much debt you can kind of expect after CRNA school. I think this is a common concern or worry for a lot of students preparing for this journey. So I want to do a quick episode and kind of shed some light on this fact and kind of give you something to expect. First, I want to preference this with, it really is going to depend a lot on every individual in this process. If you're really good at saving, if you're a spender, I'm raising my hand to that because I'm definitely a spender. So again, this is really going to look different for everyone depending on kind of your spending preferences. So, but I want to at least paint a picture with what is the average cost of CRNA school and all those other things that go into it. So you're looking at a ballpark figure of right around $100,000 to $120,000 is the average cost of CRNA school today. I do have a free guide for you in the show notes below that is the most affordable schools. There are 11 that are $60,000 or less. Now, keep in mind, prices change every year, so you do still have to look up your schools, and unfortunately, the price is slowly but surely increasing like everything in this world today. So maybe they're $62,000 now by the time I made this podcast episode and looked up those statistics, but you do have a list of schools in the show notes below that are the most affordable schools that are out there. So make sure you download that free resource. But you are looking again right around $100,000 to $120,000 is the average cost of CRNA school, with the most expensive schools being around $200,000. And again, a lot of schools not allowing you to work, especially for the last 2 years of the program. Usually for the first 9 months or so, you can get away with maybe working a shift here and there while you're doing your DNP project for the schools that are front loaded. But typically most schools, by the time you start your clinicals, they do have you step back as far as how much you're working. And honestly, you really wouldn't want to. You don't want to risk getting bad grades or getting kicked out due to trying to juggle too much at once. So it really is best to kind of suck it up for the meantime and take out loans to live, which I know is cringeworthy, but people have done it. People have survived. I'm living proof of that. And plenty of CRNAs I work with have also done the same thing. But this can get complicated because essentially if you are on your own, you don't have any support as far as being married or mom and dad or anyone like that who's willing to co-sign for you, it can get to be very difficult to get private loans when you're unemployed. So you do have to have a plan, whether that's someone to co-sign for you, whether that's a significant other who is essentially going to be able to go in on a loan with you. You will need a co-signer for private loans. Student loans will get you most of the way. You can do graduate plus loans. You will have to do graduate plus loans, and for the most part, it should cover the majority of it, but it might not cover all of your living expenses. So kind of what we did, this is, 10 years ago, so I'm dating myself, but we cut out all unnecessary expenses. That was for us, things like going out to eat. Definitely don't shop at Starbucks, or not shop, but buy Starbucks. We cut out cable. We did keep our Netflix subscription. We did have a gym membership subscription, but for the most part, we cut out everything that we felt was not 100% necessary for our physical or mental health. We drove used cars that were paid off. I named mine Old Betty. She got me through CRNA school. She ended up being a 14-year-old Nissan Sentra by the time I got rid of her. And that was even 2 years after I graduated CRNA school, until my door handle broke off in the snowstorm and I was pregnant, and I finally decided enough's enough. I deserve a new car. I can afford one. And I still have that car today, 7 years later. So anyhow, so just be thrifty with your finances. Obviously pick and choose what you want to spend your money on. But the biggest benefit, or the biggest piece of recommendation I can give you right now, is to have a budget. Knowing what exactly you need month to month, week to week, knowing when your certain things come out of your checking account so you know how to budget. I know for me, what made it easy for me or easier is I had 2 separate savings accounts. And so that way I would put my loan payment money, meaning or tuition payment money, in a certain checking account. So I knew I had enough to pay tuition. It was no question. So I wouldn't screw it up. So my personal savings and my personal checking account were, what I did with it. But I had a separate savings account that I made sure every semester, every quarter, that I had enough money in that account to cover my tuition. There was an issue I had once in school where I dropped below full-time status, quote unquote, because that's when the clinicals picked up. And I got a notice from my loans that were deferred that I was going to have to start paying on them. And that was kind of a freak out moment because I couldn't afford to do that. I was able to get a letter from my program director to essentially let the loan people know that, yes, I truly was indeed full-time, even though I wasn't showing enough credits, that clinicals replaced those credit hours. So if that happens to you, try not to freak out, but go to your program, ask for help on that end of things. But the budgeting thing is really, really key. How much do you need for your rent, your car payments, any other loans? Highly recommend before you start CRNA school to pay off any credit card debt. That is really, really key. You do not want that hanging over your head. Other things to consider is loan deferment. I had to defer undergrad loans because I couldn't afford to pay all the other bills and my undergrad payments. That was kind of a painful moment, that when I was getting ready to graduate CRNA school, that I actually got, when they started like, oh, you're going to start paying again here soon, you're getting ready to graduate. They sent me the information bill, or, anticipating this in 6 months is going to reinstate kind of thing. I owed over 110% of my student loans after I spent 3 years paying on them as a nurse. That made me want to cry. That was really, really a sad, sad day. That I was like, wow, by deferring my loans for a little over 2 years, I have just wiped out 3 years of payments and then some. It was very depressing to see that happen. So just be cognizant that interest, it stacks up, and it stacks up very quickly on $70,000 of loans, which is what I had in undergrad. The interest comes back really quick. So if you are able to at least make your minimum payments on your undergrad loans, I do suggest that. If you're able to swing that, you're still going to accrue interest, but you'll at least won't be getting over 100% of your loans to come back at you. You're at least going to be making what you need to keep the interest at bay, so you don't have that happen to you. So I do recommend that if it's possible. Best case scenario, you're still able to pay your minimum payments on your student loans that you have from undergrad, if that's the case. Other things to consider as far as how much debt you're going to have when you get out of CRNA school is where you live during CRNA school. If you can share a place with someone else. I know some students have to travel at different clinical sites and get Airbnbs, extended stay facilities. That adds up really quickly. So knowing that when you pick your CRNA program is going to allow you to understand, what is this going to look like for me? I know for me, I had to go spend 3 to 4 nights a week, and I stayed with my parents because it happened to be by the school that I went to. So I traveled, 2 hours one way to get to class, and nowadays so many things are hybrid or online. I don't even think they make students do that anymore, but I had to travel 2 hours one way to get to class. And because I had class 4 to 5 days a week in the beginning, I would actually stay with my parents and go to class every day and then go back home, which was 2 hours away on the days that I, had a few days off of class. So that's how I managed that situation. A few of my other classmates had to get extended stay hotels to make this work for them. And that does add up. So something to keep in mind there. But I graduated, and I went to one of the most affordable CRNA schools that is on that list, by the way. I'm not going to share which one it is, but it's on that list. I went to one of the most affordable CRNA schools. I had to take out not only money to cover my tuition, I had to take out loans to cover my some living expenses, because we didn't quite make the ends meet with just my husband's salary.
Hey, future CRNA, another daily dose of inspiration from a CRNA School Prep Academy student. After 3 years of applying and a lot of rejections, I finally got an acceptance letter to one of my top choice schools. Coming from a background of being told and treated like I'm not good enough for most of my life, the mental gymnastics I had to do was real. For the past 3 years, I have purposely been putting myself in a position to be told I'm not good enough. And I was told that many, many times. The difference is, since becoming a nurse, I know that I am good enough. My socioeconomical and educational background was not so great growing up, and nursing was my second career. When I was younger, I lacked confidence in my educational capabilities as a young adult, and it was not until I went back for nursing that I realized I could be smart enough. I wrecked my GPA when I was younger, so I had to work hard to correct it. I did that in nursing school with my BSN, but I had to be extra aware of what programs use the last 60 credits or nursing degree calculations. Despite having 6 years of ICU experience and 10 years overall, I had to return to the ICU to gain recent experience, which when you have a cushy IR cath lab position was no easy task. But I can say now that it was worth it. I'm going to do this and I cannot wait to get started. I would like to thank CRNA School Prep Academy and all the resources and support that is available. Thank you, Jenny and Richard, and everyone else for making our dreams a possibility. Start date, June of 2023, SRNA signing out. Congratulations, CSPA student. If you're listening, I know who you are. I'm so incredibly proud of you. I know you've been at this for a long time. So those of you listening to this story, if you can relate to the feelings of not being good enough, I hope this story hit home. And let me remind you that you are too capable of achieving your dream of becoming a CRNA. If you're not already signed up for our free Future CRNA newsletter, be sure to do so now. Pause this episode and go click the link in the show notes in the comments below. Cheers to your future. I'm rooting for you. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, so I got a stipend while I was in graduate school for a job that I took after school. And that stipend was about $35,000. And I was able to start collecting on that stipend prior to graduating. That really helped get us through. If it wasn't for that stipend, we would have had taken out more loans. Be careful with stipends because some hospitals that offer stipends, they offer them for a reason because they can't retain staff. That's kind of a red flag. Just keep in mind. Not always the case, but it can be kind of a red flag as far as why do they have to offer stipends to work here? Is it that bad? Are people leaving? Is it a mass exodus? Just talk to people that work there. Make sure it's a desirable place to work. Make sure you want to work there because most stipends come with like terms, meaning you have to give us 4 years of your life or else, we're covered for you and then some interest. So you have to make sure, and they have a legal team behind them. They will come for that money and they will collect their interest. You do not want to mess with that. So again, make sure when you're signing up for those stipends that you are equally signing away a chunk of your life, and you need to make sure you're going to withhold those terms. I knew people who signed those contracts, took the money, and then for whatever reason, after a year or two of working, maybe they owed 4 years, they decided to move, or their spouse relocated and then they wanted to relocate, but they couldn't get out of that contract. So they ended up owing a bunch of money. It was really messy, really ugly. You don't want that to happen to you. And I know sometimes you don't really know what's going to happen, but if you have a spouse who's always moving around or potentially has the ability to need to relocate for a job, consider that before you sign a 4-year contract. That's just some advice. But I graduated with I went to one of the most affordable schools that was under $60,000. We took out a little bit of living, probably about, I want to say we took out maybe $1,000 or $2 a month approximately for living. That was on top of what my husband was making per month to make ends meet. Essentially, I had to replace my salary as a nurse, which back then was right around like $3,000 a month is what I was bringing in as a nurse. We essentially had to take out just under that in personal loans in order to keep a roof over our head. I think we did manage to cut like $900 a month out of our budget, but that was the most we could do. So we had to take out like $2,400 a month or so approximately extra to live on top of my husband's salary. So we did that, got the stipend, like I mentioned. I ended up with $70,000 in total for my graduate loans. Again, back when I went to CRNA school, again, dating myself, my school was like really cheap. I want to say it was like $40,000 for the entire program. I want to say it's closer to $60,000 now. Again, this was a decade ago, you guys. But that being said, I took out that plus, like I said, about $30,000 or so of personal loans. Plus, I had the stipend, which saved us from taking out even more personal loans. And then I had $70,000-ish, $75,000 of undergraduate loans. So I had about $150,000 of student loans all in all by the time I was done with school. The first 1 to 2 years, I paid quite a bit extra every month on it. I didn't have any kids and I was working full-time, extra. joined a cardiac team and did a lot of 24-hour shifts, made a lot of money doing that. And so I was able to pay that off, pay down that amount of loans pretty quickly. Soon though, unfortunately, after I had kids, I kind of got absent-minded about paying any extra. At that moment I refinanced, made sure I had a lower interest rate. So about, like I said, looking at around 70,000 of graduate, 70,000 of undergrad, about $150,000 total, give or take, $5,000 or $6,000 here and there. And I ended up paying all of that off in a total of 7 years. Again, the first 2, I was just paying extra all the time. And then I finally got kind of lazy with that. And so I refinanced and set it up on a 5-year repayment plan. And I was kind of like a set it and forget it kind of thing. I just kept paying. If I remember to pay extra, I would, but I didn't always remember. So that's my recommendation to you is when you're done with school, refinance your loans, decrease your interest rate if possible, and then set it up on a payment plan and make sure you get it paid off as soon as possible. So again, and we didn't have to make any life sacrifices, or we lived very well being able to pay on $150,000 of debt in 7 years. Now, most people, I think this day and age, are coming out with about $200,000 to $250,000. Kind of my rule of thumb to think about. You want to make sure you have less, ideally, than 100% debt to income ratio, meaning if you have $150,000 of debt, what is your income? And it should be at least $150,000 of income if you have $150,000 of debt. When you start looking into having more of that ratio lean, like where you're making $100,000 and you have $150,000 of debt, it becomes much harder to pay that debt off in a reasonable amount of time. So that's kind of a ballpark figure to kind of help you gauge where you're going to be. The average CRNA salary today is right around $180,000. It is skyrocketing. It's the last few years have been insane. I've seen a huge leap in hourly rates for CRNAs. Obviously, it still depends whether you're a new grad or whether you're also living in Ohio versus New York. So it depends on where you live. But even in places that are very affordable living, we have seen a dramatic increase in hourly rates, especially if you're looking at locums, which is equivalent to travel nursing, but it's the travel CRNA world called locums. You can make $200 an hour or more. So again, and some people make their whole careers out of doing that, and they just kind of move around. So it just all depends on what you're looking for. But I hope this helps shed some light. I am rooting for you. I would say don't let the fear or stress of debt deter you from becoming a CRNA. It is doable to pay it off, but be very careful and plan for your financial security. Plan for the what ifs or the unknowns. Life doesn't stop because CRNA school happens, right? You're going to have your car break down. Your kids are going to get sick. Your dog's going to get sick. Your family member might get sick. Things happen. So have an A, B, and C backup plan for financially to be able to support you during school. Have a plan if something terrible goes wrong, you can move in with mom and dad, whatever it may be. Have those plans in place to make sure you are going to be okay, even if the worst case scenario unfolds. Hopefully it does not, but you have to plan for the worst case, and that way you can make sure you can weather the storms. CRNA school is short, but it can feel long, right? The years are short, but the days are long. All right. Well, I hope you guys found this episode helpful. Cora and Clara say hello. Thank you for putting up with all my edits in this video today, in this podcast episode. You guys take care. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Hey, future CRNA, as always, I appreciate you and your loyalty. Thank you so very much for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear from you, so screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories with your biggest takeaway. Don't forget to tag me at CRNA School Prep Academy so I can personally thank you. Be sure to head over to CRNASchoolPrepAcademy.com to check out our blog and gather free resources to help you along your CRNA journey. Stay strong, and I'll see you next week.